name is Sean Adams, and I'm with United Front Transportation Services, and I stand here today with my partner,
Dana James, and we're here to talk about safety for all our passengers and to give you an example on how we plan to practice safety. We also would like to let you know how we personalize every tour for individuals, every group, every family need. Whatever your need is, we can customize. Here's an example how we plan to practice safety with all our passengers. We will have a hand sanitizer and a face mask for every individual passenger.
and if you would like a pair of gloves, we will make sure that they're accessible as well. We also plan to sanitize the van upon exiting and entering the van. Remember, your destination is our business, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome to Laplace, Louisiana. My name is Raquel Burns. I'm the Regional Director of Operations for Q Hotels. We have 4 major brands out here, so there's more than just swamps in Laplace. There are hotel rooms. We have the Holiday Inn Express and Suites, which is a full Formula Blue. We have a Hampton Inn. We have a Best Western, and we also have a Town Place Suites. For all of our guests, we have things ranging from kitchenettes in our suites to standard rooms. We have whirlpool bathtubs in some of our rooms at our hotels. We have honeymoon suites at one of our hotels. And we also offer an outdoor gazebo experience for groups that want to come and just do something a little bit different. Maybe barbecue, hang out as a family, talk about things, spend the day together, and not just be cooped up in a hotel room. Every hotel offers complimentary continental breakfast, and it is a hot breakfast with rotating items. As per all of our brand standards, you can be guaranteed a great experience outside of the hustle and bustle of a big city. Thank you. Right now, we're standing outside the fire pit area of the Town Place Suites by Marriott. Groups are always looking for something just a little bit unique, a little bit different, all kinds of experiences here in the river parishes. So by our fire pit area, we not only have this feature with a stone enclosure for seating, we also offer an outdoor pool area with water effects, and we have a half basketball court for the kids and the adults who just want to get rid of a little bit of extra energy. In addition to having seating and entertainment options, in the front of this hotel, we have a private grilling area for our guests to sit at, relax with outdoor furniture. And we also have parking special for motor coaches, which is a very important thing for people nowadays. Outside of that area, our Best Western is in partnership with Harley-Davidson and offers Harley-Davidson motorcycle parking, as well as for all those other motorcycles if you choose to ride on those. We have a motorcycle washing station. And for those of you who are just a little bit smarter than the rest of us, we have an electric car plug-in area as well. So as you can see, we do have a lot more to offer in the river parishes than you can get in any stodgy downtown hotel. Thank you.
Bonjour, my name is Joseph, and I'm going to take you through a quick walk through Laura Plantation so you can learn a little bit more about Louisiana Creole culture through the eyes of 4 generations of the people who lived here. You see the Laura Plantation store since 1805, that's when this plantation was founded. We're going to walk up the steps here, head toward the door, and see what's inside. When you come to visit with us, you'll first walk into the gift shop and you'll make your way over here to the ticket counter where you'll meet someone. And we're closed right now, obviously, because we want to make sure that our staff and our visitors are safe, and we'll be following the recommendations of the health experts, of the government officials as to when we will reopen. And we're certainly looking forward to seeing you when that takes place. Once you've made your way through the gift shop, we'll make our way out here onto the side porch. Oh, look. That's Alfie. He likes to greet visitors too, and sometimes run away. But if you stand still long enough, he'll come up and let you pet him. And while you're waiting for your tour, you can hang out in the gift shop or here on one of these wonderful galleries in the courtyard just outside the gift shop. Some rocking chairs for you over there. Nice, cool, shady tables and chairs. And our tour starts right here in this courtyard. So come and follow me through the gate up the pathway and we'll walk toward the main house. Right there on the left is a sugar kettle. And what's that look? A lizard. He's enjoying the sun today. There are some leaning ladies. Now these flowers will get really tall and then they lean over the pathway and make a covering. You see the palm tree there on the right and a cannon on the left. Oh, look at these oak trees. Wow. It's fun to see visitors just stop and admire them when they come to have a tour with us. They're over 200 years old. They're there in front of the house making this great canopy and shading the porches. And here is the facade of the main house at Laura Plantation. It was built in 1805 in the traditional Creole style, raised high off the ground to avoid the potential of flooding of the Mississippi River and also to catch the nice breezes that would blow across. Our story starts back in 1936, actually, when Laura, who was the great-granddaughter of the people who founded this place, wrote down her family stories for her children up in St. Louis in Missouri. We found those, this handwritten manuscript, in 1993, and from there we were able to reconstruct many of the stories that happened here on this place. So what we do is take our visitors and walk in the footsteps of 4 generations of one Louisiana Creole family. And in this family, there are people of all different colors and backgrounds. But what sets them apart as Creoles is that they're born here in Louisiana, they speak French, and they are Catholic. And they do not consider themselves to be American, because for them, Americans are foreigners and immigrants in this former French colony where they have been since 1699. On the very first page of Laura's memoirs that I told you about just a few minutes ago, she talks about these people, her great-grandparents who founded this plantation. I'm not going to go into all the details of their story because I want to save that for when you actually come to visit with us. But the important thing to know is that they came here after Louisiana was sold to the United States in 1803 and set up this sugar farm. And when he died, his widow, Laura's great-grandmother, Nanette, took over and ran this place for 21 years. She was in fact the first of 4 generations of the women of this family who would run this farm. After Nanette, who you just met, decided that she was going to retire, it was her 3 children who would take over different roles and responsibilities in running this farm. And we tell you all about their stories upstairs, but the older son is named Louis Duparc, the middle son named Flagy, and this is one of the central characters in our story. Her name is Elizabeth Duparc, who would be Laura's grandmother. I told you that there were 4 generations in this family, so this is the beginning of the second one. Laura's grandmother, Elizabeth Duparc. She gets married with a young Frenchman named Raymond Lecoul, and he comes from this wonderful chateau over in Bordeaux in France. There's a whole backstory to the way that they met and how their marriage was set up, but it's a story that we're going to save for you when you come to visit with us. Louisiana Creole culture is a blend of cultural influences from Native Americans, from Europeans, and from West Africans. And these first West African slaves were brought to Louisiana by the French back in the 1720s. And they greatly influenced the culture, the language, the foodways here in Louisiana, and they also influenced the architecture. Well, this is what we call in French, une maison de 30, a house of 30. And if you look right up here, you can see that there are some numbers carved into the wood here. Over here on the upriver side of the house is a lovely French parterre garden that we can take a quick little walk through so you can see the crepe myrtles here. The path is kind of crunchy. Right here you can see that the gladiolas are blooming. It's springtime in Louisiana and it is absolutely beautiful. Now we're going to go up the stairs to the front gallery of the house. Well, this porch runs all the way, or used to run all the way around the house, but now it is just across the front and just across the back. And from this front gallery, once upon a time, before the big levees were built along the river in 1927, from this front gallery you could see straight out onto the Mississippi River. And Laura writes in her memoirs that when she was a child, life was so boring out here that with her cousins and her siblings, they used to sit on this front porch hoping for the river boats to crash into each other so that they would have a little bit of excitement. You notice that we have the shutters closed on the front of the house, and that's to protect everything right now while we're closed for the confinement. But we're also taking this opportunity to do some updates, to do some painting, to do some other decoration on the interior of the house. So we're right now in the gentleman's parlor, walking through into the main parlor, what we call in French the salon. And this is the main area where everyone would have met together. Up there above the mantelpiece, you see Laura's great-uncle Flagy du Parc, and over to the right, the portrait of his wife, Marcelite Cortez. And we're moving on now into the ladies' parlor on the other side. And you notice that this house is not opulent, and that is because this is a Creole house. So this architecture predates the arrival of that opulent Greek Revival architecture that everyone associates with plantation houses. Now remember, this is not the American South. We're living in Creole Louisiana here, where everything is set apart from what's happening in Mississippi, in Alabama, in Georgia, and that's because Louisiana was a former French colony, and these Creole people maintained that language, that culture, and that lifestyle. Well, here above the mantelpiece, Laura's grandmother Elizabeth and her two children on the left, Aimé, and her father Emile there on the right. Well, Emile goes off to fight in the Civil War in 1861 after having spent much of his youth in France at military academy over there. Well, Laura writes a lot in her memoirs about the sibling rivalry between her aunt Aimée and her father Emile. It was a central theme to lots of the reasons that she decided in 1891 to get married with an American and leave Louisiana and go north to St. Louis. Good morning, Oren. What you working on today?
We are repainting the friezes on the interior of the house and the rooms. There used to be, according to Laura, some artwork on the top of each of the walls in the rooms. And these friezes, probably since the house was built around 1805, had that same look, that Empire, that French Empire 1805 look. So what I'm doing is I'm measuring today to make sure I have enough width from the top of the wall to where the windows start, so I can put in a frieze. And this will tell me that I have 9 inches to work with, which is great. I do know that this is 11 feet wide, 17 feet long, and I have to do this. This is a simple room because it's just 4 walls. If you go into the next room, can we go to the next room?
Sure, absolutely.
It gets a little bit more complicated. 5 of the rooms have mantles upstairs, and I want to put a frieze up here. I don't want to lose or move Elizabeth. She gives me a good 14 inches to work with here. This is the ladies' parlor, so I need something a little feminine. I already know the colors we're putting in. The house originally did not have these. These are plaster walls. We plastered this 20 years ago. And it was not white, of course. And so we had checked before 2004 what the original colors were. And believe it or not, this is a light pinkish violet. And that's why we went with this color, which is just about in every room in the house. Some people call it plantation pearl, but it is a grayish green, which amazingly goes well with so many colors. And we find it not only in Laura, but we found it in many places up and down the river road. This very neutral color, which you can combine many other colors with.
That was a fun treat because our visitors don't often get to see the kinds of things that go on behind the scenes to set the stage for the stories that we tell at Laura. There is lots of research, there is lots of planning, there is lots of discussion, and because the rest of the house is undergoing this very same redecoration that you saw Norman working on, we decided to go ahead and walk out onto the back gallery and to begin walking toward the back part of the property. This was a big place. It was about 3/4 of a mile wide and about 7 or 8 miles deep. At its height, it comprised 12,000 acres. Now, that was not all under cultivation for sugarcane. It was mostly in virgin cypress forest. Well, there on the left, you see the brick foundations for the original kitchen, which was a 2-story building, which is no longer standing. But we're walking over toward the well, the water well. Laura writes in her memoirs that she was playing back here one day after the Civil War when she was a little girl, and here she had a conversation with an old man who was called Pa Philippe. Laura writes vividly in her memoirs about what happened to him when he was brought back here after he ran away. We're going to continue on our walkthrough now, walking past the sugar kettles on our right, which are now filled with water lilies, and we're coming up on the potager, the kitchen garden. What's fun about this little project is that I'm trying to look at this site through the way that a visitor would, because, you know, for those of us who've been here for so long, we don't see things in the same way that you do who've never been here. So I'm trying to turn my head around and turn the camera so I can see all of the plants and all of the buildings, and trying to imagine what it must be like for someone who's never been here. This is a fig tree, and look, we're going to see the baby figs right here. Those will be really, really good in a few months. Oh, we'll just come out here and pick some and eat them. And right there is a bottle garden. We drink lots of wine, and these bottle gardens were all over the place on this property because even way back in the day, they drank lots of wine and they would recycle the wine bottles by making flower beds out of them. And we've had lots of repeat guests who've come back and visit with us again, who said that they took up the practice themselves and they've started making bottle gardens at their own houses, which is always a great conversation piece for people. There's a small olive jar. And now we see the banana trees. You know, bananas were never cultivated in Louisiana on a commercial scale, but on most of these plantations you found them because they were for local consumption. People were growing bananas to eat them, and yeah, we actually do eat them. And look who else decided to join us on our walk. She loves to tag along. When we first started doing tours back in 1994, Laura Plantation was the first plantation on the river to really address the topic of slavery head on, because we had so much information about the people who were enslaved here. Right there in the middle, you see a facsimile of the first inventory of enslaved people at Laura Plantation. It dates from 1808 when Laura's great-grandfather Guillaume Duparc died. And in this list are the first names of 17 men, women, and children. They were inventoried by first name, by age, by origin, by work skill, and by value. Most of them are designated as Creole, which simply means that they were born in Louisiana and they speak Creole. Several years later, this family begins acquiring American slaves, so that means that they were brought from the American South and they spoke English. On this wall, we see the family tree of Laura's great-uncle, Flagy Duparc, who did not have any children with his wife, but who did father no less than 4 children with 2 Creole slave women. If you look here to the right, you'll see the name Henriette Jean-Pierre and the names of her children and her grandchildren. Through this extensive research that we continue to do, In archives throughout South Louisiana, we are often able to help people today reconnect with ancestors who were enslaved here when this was called the Du Parc Locaux plantation. And it's an amazing thing to help people reconstruct their family stories, and in many cases they thought they would never ever be able to do that. There are 4 slave cabins on this property, which date to the 1840s. And these cabins are where Alcée Fortier, who was a Louisiana folklorist in the 1870s, recorded in the Louisiana Creole language the stories of Compère Lapin and Compère Bouquet. Now, in the English-speaking American South, these very same stories are called Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox. But what's important to understand is that these stories were actually brought here by the Senegambian slaves who were imported by the French in the 1720s. And they continued this oral tradition of telling these stories about the trickster rabbit. And the bouquet in Louisiana is not a fox, as in the American South. A bouquet is a stupid hyena. So that comes from the Wolof word bouquet, which means, obviously, hyena. And these stories were very, very well known here in Louisiana, being told in Creole and being told in French up until the 20th century. Well, the plantation bell would have been rung to signal the beginning and the end of the workday, meal times, and any emergencies. And we're walking up toward the slave cabin. You'll see there on the sign that it was built in the 1840s or so. And we'll walk up the steps here and to the right side. And these were originally 2-room cabins, but this one was added on to later in the 19th century, so that is 4 rooms, 2 on each side. These cabins were actually lived in by descendants of slaves until 1977. If we look here above the mantelpiece, we'll see a rather important document, and this is an agreement with freedmen that Laura's grandmother Elizabeth, we see her signature down here, signed after the war with 53 men and women who decide to stay here now as sharecroppers in this new economic system. 2 of the most important characters in the story that we tell here are number 10, Edward Grow, and a man also named Philip Grow. And we'll continue our walk through the cabin now. Going through the door, you can see this little cabinet was added. And here on the left are some different farm implements. There are crosscut saws, an axe, some hay forks. And there on the table is a crock jug and a dough bowl. Would have been used for mixing dough or mixing cornmeal. And into the last room of the cabin, where we're going to hear the story of that man named Edward that I just told you about on the other side, whose name appears on that contract. Since the preservation, restoration, and research project began here back in 1993, not only have we found Laura's handwritten memoirs, but this quest for information about this place has led us to France, to the National Archives there, to Washington, D.C., to local archives, to the Catholic Church archives, and through that we've been able to compile massive amounts of information about not only the people who own this place, but also the people who were slaves here. And one of the most important discoveries, one of the most recent, is the story of a man named Edouard Gros du Parc, who was born here a slave in 1835, who went off to fight in the Civil War on the Union side, the northern side, but who after the war came back to this farm to live in one of these cabins and to begin working again in the sugar mill. In the late 19th century, Edward applies for a pension as a veteran of the Union Army, a long and difficult process. Do you think that he was rewarded his pension? Come and visit with us, and you'll see. Behind the slave cabins, the sugarcane field stretches as far as the eye can see. This is only about 2 feet high because it was only planted a couple of months ago, but before harvest in late October and November, it'll be between 10 and 12 feet high. In the hour and 15 or 20 minutes that we have with our guests when they come for tours, we simply don't have time to go into all of the information and all of the details about everyone who lived at Lara. So in 2017, we opened this museum space dedicated to the enslaved population specific to Lara Plantation. Now, this represents more than 25 years of research, and it breaks down the community that existed here and the personal interactions among the people who were slaves, and also interactions with the people who owned the plantation and who consequently owned them. You'll see that it's broken into different components. There's the post-war period you saw just a few moments ago, the skilled labor. Over here we're going to see the exhibit or the panels about the people who were Union soldiers, what happened to them, their individual stories, because many of them, as I mentioned with Edward a few minutes ago, fought in the Civil War, came back to the plantation afterwards to resume their lives. Domestic life, over here we're going to see some details about the people who continue to live in the area around Lara Plantation. Many of the photographs are what we call proxy photographs. They're not specific to people who lived at Lara, but they represent particular kinds of work skills. Right over here is a photograph that's amazing. It's the picture of Lucy, and we just found that in Paris back in 2016. So you see that the discoveries are ongoing. It's a constantly evolving story and a constantly evolving preservation and restoration project that we're working on here. In this room, from 1787, the time that Guillaume Duparc, the founder of this place, acquired his first slave, we go through all the way up until the Civil War. We're able to document more than 400 first names of people who moved through this property as slaves. And this room represents just a sampling of the transactions that were taking place, buying and selling of human beings that were in some way associated with Lara Plantation.
Well, thanks for coming with us on a little tour today around the property at Lara Plantation. We're going to end up here in the gift shop so you can look around, take a look at Lara's memoirs, at the Compère Lapin stories, at the other Louisiana artisanal products that we have in here, and we hope to see you in real life very soon.
Hi, I'm Jan Basil, owner of the Seafood Pot. This is Eric, my manager. We've been open for 16 years, and I'm going to let Eric take it over from here, and he's going to show y'all around. Thank you.
How you doing? My name is Eric. A little bit about our place. We offer a lot of different things. Our specialties are, ball seafood. We do have kitchen items like fried baskets, turf daiquiri, live seafood as well. How about y'all come with me and I'll show you a little bit about this. Ready? This is where we do our boiling at, so this is kind of like my office. You want to see something right here? We got some cooking. The mud bug soaking. That's really our specialty. Stir some up for you a little bit. Let them rise so full of rock. We got a drive-through line too. Yeah, right now is our busy time of the season, so we're fortunate that they're letting us stay open. We also have some crabs down soaking as well. Operation where we clean all of our seafood, purging, getting all the dirt off of the mud bug, so all that for a reason. Yeah. My little nephew right here, Brody James. fish to go. You know, we'll have you in and out of here in, you know, no time. Perfect. You want me to put another bag on it? I got it. Want to do some in the kitchen as well? Come back in. This is where Claudia and Latoya. Smile for the camera, yeah. This is where all the fried food, you know, goes
All
down.
the good food
Yeah,
back
all the
here.
real good food right here. Yeah. Yeah, they know what they're doing here for sure. This is Miss Renita. Prepping the seafood, getting it all ready to be fried.
Onion rings ready to go now. And all the good food come from back here.
The best.
I want you to have that man over
And
there.
then you can even do daiquiris as well. You got a couple different flavors.
13.12.
Pretty much anything you want, you will have.
6 pounds of crawfish. $13.99 a pound.
Right now they only doing drive-through, but hopefully they let everybody come in soon. Appreciate y'all coming with us today and showing a little bit about the place. Y'all have to come back and see us and get a taste one day.
Hello. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the St. John Theater, I would like to welcome you to our beautiful 500-plus seat arena. This historic building opened in 1931 as Moran's Showcase Theater for the River Parishes. In 1981, St. John Theater took over. Under the direction of Mr. Jack Snowdy, we had our first musical production, South Pacific. I was fortunate enough to play the lead there. It was an enchanted evening as we enjoyed our first production. We're now in our 40th season, and we have had such great talent on our stage, as you will see this day, as we present 3 talented performers from the St. John Theater. Again, welcome to our theater and enjoy the performances.
It's on this very stage where my passion for musical theater happened. In fact, there are many great memories of Mom and I taking this stage together. And it's with that in mind that the song I selected for you today is one of her favorites from The Sound of Music in 1960, Edelweiss. Hope you enjoy. Edelweiss, Edelweiss, every morning you read me, smooth and white, clean and bright, you look happy to meet me, blossom of snow, may you bloom and grow forever. Edelweiss, Edelweiss, bless my homeland forever. Edelweiss, Edelweiss, every morning you read me, smooth and white, clean and bright, you look happy to meet me, blossom of snow, may you bloom and grow, bloom and grow forever.
mine, and today I selected a piece from the 1980 musical Les Miserables to portray the passion that can come from music. This is On My Own. On my own, pretending he's beside me, all alone, I walk with him till morning. Without him, I feel his arms around me, and when I lose my way, I close my eyes, and he has found me. In the rain, the pavement shines like silver. All the lights are misty in the river. In the darkness, the trees are full of starlight, and all I see is him and me forever and forever. And I know it's only in my mind that I'm talking to myself and not to him. And although I know that he is blind, still I say there's a way for us. I love him, but when the night is over, he is gone. The river's just a river. Without him, the world around me changes. The trees are barren everywhere, the streets are full of strangers. I love him, but every day I'm learning. All my life I've only been pretending. Without him, this world will go on turning. A world that's full of happiness that I have never known. I love him. I love him. I love him, but only on my own.
Hi, my name is Maddie Niat. I've been a part of the St. John Theater family for as long as I can remember. Today I am singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz. When all the world is a hopeless jumble and the raindrops tumble all around, heaven opens a magic
And there you have it from St. John Theater in Reserve, Louisiana. I'm Sterling Snowdy, the president of the theater. You might notice that we have the ghost light on today because there is no one in our house. Please, as soon as COVID-19 has passed us by, we'd like to have each and every one of you in our house. I'd like to introduce the singers you've heard from today. First, you heard from Michael Hoover. Then you heard from Colin and Grace Claymore. And finally, you heard from Maddie Miette. We thank them all. Till we see you next time, have a good day.
Why is it important for people to come and visit and tour the swamps? Because it's really where you see real Louisiana, in my opinion. Not that New Orleans isn't real Louisiana or any of these other places, but it's definitely one of the places outside of where people normally go to, where all the tourists go and where they all come to. If you come and you see the swamps, you can really see something.
Some of the swamps in Louisiana are probably something you can't see anywhere else.
Now the alligators, then they're all over the place. You got gators on the logs to the right, you got gators on the logs to the left up here, and you're right, you got to look around. Every trip you do is different, so you're right, you go take a look.
You really get up close and personal with the nature too. I think that's super important to really see the other side of that, which you wouldn't get that in the city, you know. So we have these magnificent cypress and tupelo swamps here, and I'll tell you all about the edible plants and all about, you know, invasive species that we have here. So that you won't get in the city.
At the age of 10, I probably started crawfishing with my dad. I could remember the story he always tells me, that he put out the set nets, he walked away, and he gave me a little foot tub and told me to go run the nets. And he sat on a log and I didn't know he was there. And he determined that I wasn't scared. So from that day on, I always did fish crawfish, and it's one of my most favorite things to do.
A lot of us in these bars in Louisiana make our living shrimping, fishing, deer hunting, duck hunting. Some of us still trap and catch muskrat. Nutria rat being an invasive species, we really had to take it to the nutria rats because they don't belong here. So we hunt and trap all of that too. But also growing down the bayou, we grow tomato, bean, cucumber, squash, eggplant. A lot of our lifestyle comes from out of these swamps and bayous. So you gotta do a lot of different things. So like for the crawfish like this, we'll do a lot of crawfish, crayfish. A deal like this with the rain that we're getting, the crawfish maybe this evening and tonight will bite pretty good. So you're catching crawfish, you got big shrimp boats or shrimp nets, and then you're deer hunting, you're duck hunting. So a lot of our lifestyle based on our food sources.
Crawfishing is a very tough task. It's a long day. Typically my day starts at 3 a.m. in the morning and I usually finish at about 3 o'clock. I run about 350 crawfish traps per day, and that usually produces somewhere around 1,000 pounds of crawfish per day. The crawfish is then taken to the seafood market where we ball them and sell them to the public.
We've been talking about the trend of that saltwater intrusion, subsidence, ground sinking, water rising, and the saltwater intrusion will mess everything up. So come see the swamp now while we still got it, because in 40, 50 years, it maybe not gonna be there for you to see, and there's gonna be all the seafood for y'all to eat. You're gonna be back to eating a hot dog and hamburger in a restaurant. Now, all of us on the bayou through these swampy areas that grow and catch all that and sell all that to the French market, the French Quarter, that the connection all through that. Without that, there's all gone. You're gonna eat just hot dog and hamburger.